Hey there, Derek Rydall here, founder of the Law of Emergence and author of the best-selling books Emergence and the Abundance Project. And I'm on another rant today. It's actually a similar rant that I've been on for a while now in these very interesting times that we've been born in. And it's very controversial and provocative, especially coming from someone that has been fundamentally a liberal, progressive, Democrat kind of individual, right? Very much caring about the underrepresented and the voiceless and the underdogs and wanting to create equality for all. So for me to be speaking about these things that I have been lately, it's definitely controversial, and it's controversial in a lot of the spiritual arenas that I move in. But I want to talk today about really the one and only virus that we actually need to deal with and that very few people are talking about. And I want to say that this does not lack in the compassion and empathy for how difficult it is to take personal responsibility for our lives. It's incredibly difficult. It's why very few people do it. But the only thing that's going to help us rise above our challenges, personally and collectively, in our society, in whatever industry, and in the country and in the world, is as each individual recognizes and reclaims their personal sovereignty, their agency. The biggest problem in America or in the world is not racism. It's not even in the top 10. The biggest problem in America and in the world is not economic inequality, is not gender inequality, is not women not getting equal pay, is not even any of these things that have become wedge issues that literally drive politics, that suck the air out of the conversations, that cause us to put all of our resources in, build up military industrial complexes, pharmaceutical industrial complexes, political industrial complexes, and even spiritual New Age industrial complexes, and social engineering, liberal, progressive industrial complexes. All of that is a smokescreen. All of that is a red herring. Now, I'm not saying there's not issues in all those areas. I'm not saying that we don't have to absolutely deal with certain systemic problems where there is racism, where there is prejudice, where there is misogyny and gender bias and sexual preference prejudice and all of that. There are very real issues that have become systemic, that have created outer barriers and obstacles to certain individuals. No doubt about it. However, our focus on making something or someone wrong outside of us, our focus on making something or someone outside of us the reason why we're not succeeding, why we're not happy, why we're not healthy, why we're not wealthy or successful, that is the virus. Because it is nobody and nothing outside of us that is the cause of our life. Period, full stop, close the book, end of story. And not only if you're telling a story that the reason why you are where you are is because of somebody else, are you playing into and perpetuating the virus of victimhood? But if you look at anybody else and tell the story about them, oh, it's those poor people because they're poor, or because they're black, or because they're women, or because they're transgender, or they're gay, or they're overweight, or they're sick, or they come from this country, or that state, or that development. Poor people. You are perceiving a lie, and you are perpetuating a limited sense of their true identity. Jesus didn't come along and say, oh, you poor people, come here, let me help you. He said, pick up your bed and walk. He said, stretch out your hand. What's the problem? I know who you are. You are the life of God. You are the child of the infinite. You have a power you haven't even begun to tap. I don't feel sorry for you. I see you. Stand up, get up, you've got this. Now, that doesn't mean there's not challenge. That doesn't mean it's easy. But the greatest teachers, masters, and leaders throughout all of history did not sympathize, did not produce a movement to create a movement of victims and of victimology. Not Martin Luther King Jr., not Gandhi, not Mother Teresa, not Abraham Lincoln, not Jesus, not anybody that has actually created real progress. Yes, they had issues. They were dealing with oppression and racial injustice and economic injustice and, other countries trying to, basically oppress them and enslave them. Yes, but that was just a Trojan horse. What they were really teaching was personal sovereignty, personal agency. What Martin Luther King Jr. was teaching was how to transform the character of the individual. He was saying, stop fighting, stop making them the bad guys, stop attacking, blaming, shaming, or being a victim. But recognize when you love, when you heal your heart, when you come with compassion, when you have a non-resistant, integral state of being, watch what happens. That's how we overcome the outer obstacle. Same thing with Buddha, Jesus, Gandhi. They modeled individuals who, yes, could speak to issues, but never made the issue a power over them. You understand? Because they understood, even Jesus standing there while Pontius Pilate is about to send him off to execution. He says, I have the power to give you life and death, man. And Jesus is like, yo, I'm afraid not. You don't have any power unless it was given to you from God. In other words, the only power you have is the power of good. You can't do anything to me. Not even death is a power over me. And so what I want to say about all this is going on right now with people fighting on both sides of the aisle, both sides of these arguments, pandemic, plandemic, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, and before that, Me Too and You Too, and men versus women and women versus men, and all of that is completely a smokescreen. It's completely a smokescreen of the ego. I'm not even blaming a person. As Gandhi said, my battle is not with you, but with the idea. Love the sin or hate the sin. It's about the pattern, not the person. And the pattern that we're being hooked by and have been since the fall from Eden, metaphorically, it's an allegory, is this belief in good and evil, this belief in some good power outside of us and some bad power outside of us. We got to stop the bad power and, prop up the good power. Right? Which means we got to stop the bad idea, prop up the good idea. We got to destroy the enemy and side with the ally. It's all a pattern. It's the greatest virus. And it makes us believe we're victims of our conditions. And again, I want to be very clear, and you have to be very clear nowadays. You got to be explicit. Somebody's going to take a little soundbite and say, he's a radical, right-wing, whatever, right? Nazi. He's saying nobody, we shouldn't care about anybody or care about any issues, and black people and women. He's saying they're all, they should just deal with it themselves. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are real issues. But the real issue, the real core of it, is a belief that something outside of us, someone outside of us, is a power over us. And the only power over us is the power within us. And now some people might say, well, that's easy for you to say, Mr. White Man Privileged. And I would say back to that person, if they say that I don't have a right to speak with my perspective and power and passion because I'm white, there's a name for that. That's called racism. That's called saying I have less value and a right because of the color of my skin. You see what I mean? You see how it's tricking us? It's just the same thing. It's just racism by another name. Or that I don't have the right because I'm a man. That's called bigotry and prejudice. It's exactly the same as saying a woman doesn't have a right. It's a trick. Everybody has a right. Every color, every creed, every gender, every preference. But if you make it into identity politics or an identity battle or you make it, you think that individuals are a monolith, that all white people or all black people or all men or all women or all gay or all straight. All that is another way to create separation. Another way to create an us versus them. And I'm telling you what I know here, folks. That path will never lead us home. Ever. Ever. It will create short-term, stopgap, punitive, force-based structures and measures that will hold the dam temporarily. And then it will burst again and again and again until it floods all of us. There's only one solution, and that is each individual reclaiming their agency, reclaiming the truth that the locus of control and power and causation over their life is in one place only, and that is within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Nirvana is within you. Your power is within you. The source and substance and power of all of your creation is within you. Life does not happen to you, no matter how much it appears to be. It happens through and as you, and nothing can enter into your experience except as an activity of your consciousness. Now, again, it's really hard. It's really, really hard to take back our power. It's really hard to recognize that nobody and nothing outside of us is to blame for the life we have. And not even we are to blame for it. It's not a blame game. It's a virus. It's the virus that has conditioned us to believe we're victims, that has conditioned us to give our power away, that has conditioned us to separate and polarize and fight and make enemies of people and conditions, which is why Jesus came along and said, love your enemy as much as it takes until they're no longer an enemy. And the enemy is in your own household. And again, that doesn't mean we can't have issues. Doesn't mean we shouldn't fix the school to prison pipeline problem, that we shouldn't fix systemic racism in the justice, in law, that we shouldn't clean up the police force and give them better training and hire better people. It doesn't mean we shouldn't make sure that there's an equal playing field, equal opportunity. Absolutely. But if that's coming from a perspective and a perception of an enemy and an ally, of a victim and a victimizer, whatever we create will just produce more victims and victimizers. You get it? It's the place we're coming from. It's the seed we're planting. And we see with all these movements, political, somebody gets into office for the good reasons and pretty soon they're taken up by the machine. Somebody gets started with the Me Too movement for good reasons pretty much, and then eventually they're swept up by this propaganda and the pattern. Somebody gets involved in Black Lives Matter for the right reasons, from love and compassion and power, and pretty soon they're swept up in the propaganda and they don't want to speak what's really in their heart because they'll get canceled, and pretty soon we're back into the same old thing, same old pattern. And if you see what's happening right now, this pattern is coming to the surface in such an acute way right now. The conspiracy theories, the propaganda, mask, no mask, all of this. And we're getting completely lost in terms of what's really going on. And I'm speaking to you and I'm speaking to myself. I've been through a tragedy recently. I've been through many, many challenges. And I can tell you it's very difficult to continue to know the truth that God or life or love or truth, that all of it is within us, that we are that sovereign place and instrument through which life and God fulfills itself. And nobody and nothing outside of us is ever a power over us. And that means also then we have to give that same ability to see others, to not look at them as victims, to not look at them with pity and sympathy, Because a lot of that is just a projection of our own wounds and our own trauma and the places where we're not willing to look and take complete power, take complete ownership of. And if you see a person as less than, as broken, as impoverished, as victims, what you see is what is the box you hold them in. They did a study years ago, Pygmalion in the classroom, where they told the teachers, okay, here's a group of the lowest, testing students, here's the group of the average students, here's a group of the highest standard students. And over a semester or a year, at the end of it, the ones that the teachers had that were the lowest, considered I don't know, I'm having a hard time with the words, lowest testing or just the lowest denominator of students, they had all the lower tests. The ones that were told that they were the highest students, they had all the higher tests, some of them even testing higher, the highest in the district. And the ones that were told they were average, they were all pretty average results. And then it was revealed there was no difference between any of the students. They were all just randomly picked from the population. In other words, the box the teacher held them in either caused the student to shrink to fit it or rise to fill it. I want you to really take that in, because I know this can be hard. Doesn't mean you don't have compassion. It doesn't mean you don't see problems appearing. But it's really important to know that the way you hold a person, if you see them as, oh, those poor people, oh, terrible things are happening to women or people of color or transgender or whatever, or conversely, oh, those terrible toxic males or those terrible white people, you're creating the frame and the box that if they're not more conscious than you, and if enough people see them that way, they're stuck. They're going to shrink to fit it, or they're going to rise to fill it, depending on what you are willing to hold for them. I remember one of my mentors, an African-American man who actually kind of raised me spiritually. I call him my spiritual father. And he used to work in the child services, delinquents and adoption and all that. And he would go into prisons and stuff. And he went in and he had this one skinhead, total Nazi skinhead. And my mentor is like this big, black, flamboyant, looks like a pimp, right? And he's just pure love. And the godfather of my children, all of that. And his ability to see love, to see truth, was very powerful. And so this guy's coming at him, it's like calling him the N-word and all that stuff. And he just held that perception of this young man, and didn't waver. I mean, he did his own work. I don't know all the little details of what he had to do to stay solid and anchored. I think that's just who he was. But he just kept seeing the truth of this young man. He didn't see him as the enemy. He didn't see him as the poor kid in the system. He saw the truth of him. And by the end of a relatively short period of time of going in, on a regular basis and having to deal with some things, by the end of that, this Nazi skinhead kid said to this big black man, I don't know what you've done to me. I don't know what to think about anybody else, but I love you, man. I love you. That's the power. That's the power. When we love fiercely enough to see the truth about everybody, and absolutely and essentially about ourselves, no matter what the conditions are, when we see ourselves as divine, infinite, inexhaustible emanations of love, truth, power, beauty, brilliance, abundance, no matter what condition comes, no matter what, if we're men, women, gay, straight, black, white, red, brown, when we make that commitment to ourselves and even against all popularity, we're not going to see others less than that. We're not going to tell that old story anymore. Now we become real influencers, lights in the world, transformational leaders, whether you even say a word. That's what's being called of us right now. In the Black community, and this is controversial to say, but what do you think is going to be more effective? Saying, oh, those terrible white people and 400 plus years of slavery and racism, that's why you can't get ahead. So basically teaching them learned helplessness. Imagine hearing that story over and over. Oh, it's because of the man, it's because of history, it's because we were brought over here as slaves and there's nothing you can do about it until the system changes. That's called indoctrinating an individual into learned helplessness. Versus the story of, yes, there's this terrible system and there's a lot of bad people out there and there's all this shit that's happened in the past. But guess what? You're stronger than that. You're better than that. I know who you are. You know who you are. And then showing examples of individuals, Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., individuals that have risen up, not by attacking, fighting, blaming, shaming, but by reclaiming their divine sovereignty, their own self-respect. It's hard work. That's why we avoid it. And it's really scary and hard work to hold somebody else to it. Just what I said right there, taken out of context, forget about it, right? That's the kind of thing that gets you canceled. Now, am I telling the truth? 100%. It's self-evident. Which story is going to help a person and inspire a person and help a person awaken? It's, terrible system, terrible people out there, and, it's because of hundreds of years of history. Same with women, right? Oh, you got to be a man if you want to succeed. And think of the story that's been told to women. You got to be a man to succeed. Women don't get equal pay. It's an unfair, unjust world. And, you go, sister. And then what happens? An epidemic of women believing they can't actually still be women and succeed. They have to be like men. Versus, yeah, it's harder. Yeah, you may have to work harder. You may have to work smarter. But so what? You have the power in you to become whatever you want, to fulfill your destiny, no matter what any man thinks, no matter what anybody says. Who cares about what they say? Who cares about what's happened before? You're not a product of your past, and you're especially not a product of generations before. The past does not equal the future. Can you see the difference between the story? Which story is actually going to change the story? If we keep telling ourselves, oh, it's because of my parents, it's because of my wife, my husband, it's because of my physical disability, it's because I'm big bone, that's why I can't lose weight, it's because whatever. Or it's because of the man, it's because of white man, black man, whatever the story we tell ourselves. Anytime we tell ourselves or anybody else that the reason we can't succeed or they can't succeed is because of something or someone in the past or outside of them, we are testifying to a lie. And we are perpetuating and indoctrinating lack, limitation, and victimhood, period. And we must stop. That is the virus that is destroying us. And the only thing that will inoculate us is the realization and the remembrance and the courage to stand in the truth that there's one power and it's within us. And that whatever we need to be all we were created to be, we brought it with us, we have it in us, and it's hard. The way is straight and narrow, and few there be that follow the path to life. I'm not saying it's easy, and it's not fair, and it's not equal, right? We all have different paths of reclaiming our power and our sovereignty and our agency, and remembering that the locus of control is within us, not out there. Nelson Mandela had a very, very difficult path. Way harder than mine, right? imprisoned for 20 some years, but he found his power again. And as a result, look at who he became. He became as great as the difficulty that his path was. The deeper the roots have to go in the dark soil, the higher the shoots can grow towards the light. Deep roots bring about tall shoots and richer fruits. So yes, some of us have more difficult paths, or at least different ones. But the result, if we claim our power, no matter what, it really doesn't matter. We can become equally powerful, equally beautiful, equally successful, equally impactful. It's not about the color of your skin or your gender or your religion or your sexual preference. That's all a Trojan horse and a red herring. That's just the unique portal you've signed up for. And yes, on a soul level, we all signed up for it, that you signed up for your transformation. You're not a victim of it. You're a volunteer. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. And I'm not saying if we're moved and inspired, we don't work to make the system better on all levels. But not from the place that we're a victim or you're a victim, but from an inspired and creative place of evolution and innovation with the consciousness. Remember, the issue is the Trojan horse, but the real solution is the transformation of the individual. And no matter who it is, no matter what the issue has been throughout history, if it's made a real change in the evolution of society, that is how they went about it. Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Buddha, Jesus, on and on and on. Their real mission was the transformation of individual character and being, even if they were using issues of civil rights and social injustice and all that. You get it? So you may have issues, physical challenges, financial challenges, racial challenges, economic injustice challenges, gender challenges, sexual preference challenges, family challenges, whatever that is. You may have one or more of those, but don't get lost in thinking that somehow you're specially plighted with that. That's just the unique way you signed up to activate a deeper desire and commitment to wake up, to discover who you really are, to build a level of soul stamina and resilience that is strong enough, big enough love and compassion and power and wisdom that particular issue is no longer a problem to you. You get it? When the weight is too heavy, you don't pray to get rid of the weight or to make the weight lighter. You pray to get stronger, right? Whatever that weight is, whatever that burden is, you don't try to get rid of the burden. It's the workout room. You use it to make you stronger. If you're in an environment that lacks love, you don't complain that there's not enough love. You make your capacity to love stronger. If there's not peace, there's conflict. You don't complain about everybody conflicting. You work on your peace and your wisdom, and you become the light in that darkness. The only virus is the virus of believing something outside of us or someone outside of us is the cause of our life. And the only solution is realizing that I, in the midst of me, am God, am mighty, am the only cause unto my life. And then practice. Talk to yourself that way every day. Pray and meditate and read and journal and connect with people of like mind and build that knowing about who and what you are, and then generously give of that love and that light wherever you go. That's my invitation to you. That's my rant for today. I say rant because lately I'm like a grumpy old man. I'm like, get off my lawn. I'm like, network, want to go to the window and shout, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. But what I know is that anger is a righteous fire. And I'm not angry at people, right? It's an energy that's galvanizing me to have the courage to just speak some difficult truths, no matter what. because that's my commitment, is to tell the truth and live the truth as best as I can in service of the highest good for all, no matter the cost. I invite you to that same commitment. I hope this has served you, stirred you up, opened some ideas. Go practice. Take a little bit of responsibility back every day. And until next time, live authentically, love unconditionally, and follow your destiny. Take care.